that? He has a paper copy, Rebecca. Okay. I got yelled at the other day.
All right, we're on. We don't yell here.
I was like, Mom, takes this paper too. I even asked him.
Thank you,
I
Chief.
wrote it up
Sure.
right, and I might know it.
I'd
you.
like to adjourn. Second. Okay. Favor? Aye. Mike?
Aye.
Thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for your thoughtful presentation.
Ready first? I call to order the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. It is
47. 48.
6:47. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
And it looks like everybody is here except Trustee Carpenter, who has been excused and may be joining us late. The first item on our agenda is to discuss the fourth quarter financial report. With Mark here? Yes. Go for it.
Well, it's time for the fourth quarter financial report.
Good intro.
So you've got the materials. It was a slightly unfavorable outcome this year, about $20,000, which is 0.2% of expenditures. However, really, in my opinion, it wasn't really so much driven by expenditures as it was some misses on revenue estimates from the 2018 budget. That being said, I did a few pages of narrative. I'd be happy to take any questions. I don't know if you want to go page by page or section by section. I'm at your liberty.
Can you just highlight, some of them, like, we already knew that studies and plans were going over because of the fire station, but is there any new things that you noticed that were significant? Like new changes?
Well, I mean, with each projection, we continue to refine the numbers. I mean, the revenues for court fines and parking citations did come in under the third quarter projections. So,
And is the chief here? No, he's not here anymore. I
He's
wondered
right,
about.
he's right behind
Oh,
you.
hi, chief. Do you have any reasons? Not that I'm complaining, because I'm not, but I have not gotten tickets in the last few weeks, which is abnormal. In 6 years, this is different.
That's because they're up on my street.
Yeah, I got a ticket.
Oh, good. But they are down a little bit. So is there any? Is it just because of the weather?
Don't call attention.
We can, I'll be sure to make sure that they are doing more.
I was just wondering if there was like some.
No, I mean, we are analyzing that. I do think some of it is compliance, some of it is also the weather. But there is some, I think there's a compliance. We were down about 400 tickets from 2017 to 2019 on a particular month. So, and it's been declining since that first month that we changed the parking person doing the night parking versus the officers doing the night parking. So that was a quick hit for those first. That's one aspect of it. So we're monitoring it pretty close as far as how we're doing moving forward.
I think it's perfectly fine for this line to be less. It's pretty high anyways.
I mean, we're low on court fees, parking fines, building permit fees. I'm a little concerned about our revenue projections just overall, and we didn't have a chance to compare them to 2019, but how did did we take them down in 2019?
I generally anecdotally say that, as part of the process is, again, you've probably heard me say this before, we always continually monitor the trends. We thought we had achieved a new baseline in 2017 for parking citations, and then in 2018, the numbers just didn't materialize the same way they did in 2017. So, we're going to look and see what happens the first 6 months here, see whether or not 17 was abnormally high, or if 18 was just a little bit off compared to 17.
I'm more concerned about the court fines, because those have been down for a while, there's been a trend. And like trustee Menta said, did we lower it for 2019? I know parking's been up and down.
I'm just going off general recollection, I would imagine it was lowered. I don't have the 2019 budget to discuss the 2018 financial report.
Can I ask a question as well? General legal, professional fees, why are we so, I'm trying to figure out, why are we off there by so much?
Yes, why?
It really depends on the level of engagement of our legal counsel with the issues at hand.
Is that our kind of,
Oh, I think that's for the fire station, isn't it?
oh, is that, okay, I'm
Is
just
that
trying to
why?
figure out why the
No.
tax.
No, okay.
No.
Well, that got moved.
So is it just generally, it's just us asking more questions legally? I'm just trying to figure out if there's like, if there's an issue or an initiative or something that it's tied to, or if it's,
Well, I mean,
Just
it's a
general.
description for that section outlines, about 20% over for just general engagement, and about 4 times over budget on other legal issues.
Is
A
that-
lot of that is employee relations related that are really hard to anticipate.
I do have a question about that. So this would be whose time? It would be Nathan's?
The Crivello, and then you've got Von Priest and Roper, I think are the 2 biggest components of that.
Okay, so my question would be, what is the base that we have in our budget for legal? Was it 90 grand? And so now for general, which would be Crivello, right? It would be 13, so it'd be 103 around or something like that? What's the total for that line item? And it just is gonna come into play when we have our attorney contract coming up.
Yeah, let me just go back to that budget. I'm just gonna take legal and subtract 5,000 is what mine's going to do.
It's projected at 95, right?
I think every year it was around 90 something.
So, budget was 65,000, so 60 of that was for general legal counsel, 5,000 was for other legal, of which a portion of that is, employee-related legal.
So is the other part of Cravella in the municipal court?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 60,000 would be his just general here.
Board and general public engagement issues, yeah.
Okay, so it's 60 plus 30,000?
So you wanna know what was general legal
Yes.
actual versus employee-related legal?
Well, the
Because I don't think that details.
municipal court budget was 30,000 for court legal, and that came in at 25,000 and change.
Okay, so this is just the general, this is the one that I'm just looking for the total for the actual.
So if you're looking, I see what you're saying. So let me just get my thinking hat back on
You can
here.
send it, it's fine.
So if 95,000 was projected, and 17 of that was other, that means 78,000 is general in 18. And I usually try to put that into context, so I will do that.
So 103, combine it with the 25,000.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I had a question on Duncan. So Duncan services contracts and fees should be related to the parking fines, right? I mean,
No.
is there a one-to-one, is there some kind of?
Duncan fees are related to a number of things. One of them is the number of citations issued. Another is the parking permits. Another is some follow-up on collection notices and processing those items, so that is not done by departmental staff. And then there's some customer fees that come in and out of that.
But do they so they charge us a set amount per,
Yes.
citation?
Per
For
transaction.
citation issue, yes.
And per permit. It would be really great to know, I know you spread them out over different budgets, I watch every year, but, could you, now that we're embarking on the parking study, somehow put them together, like what do we, for the last 5 years, what is we paid out to Duncan? Like what are
Sure.
the actuals in fees and fines, just because then, it'd be great to get the consultant that,
Is the percentage, the Duncan as a percentage of our
it's pretty high.
parking citations, like was only 17.5% and 16, and now it's 19.5%.
I think the fees are.
I don't know, yeah, so, I mean, I just,
Well, let me do an analysis and share that with the board as a good follow-up.
it'd be good to understand, yeah, how Duncan, and the electric, in the police budget, the overage on electricity, is that partly because some of the electric from the old building, or is being applied to this line, or is this just the new build? Are we really spending $41,000 a year on electricity for the new building?
That is just the new building.
Yep. It definitely-
The,
Why is it, why?
the issues that staff is evaluating right now is because during a lot of renovation and construction period,
Mhm.
there was a lot of open spaces, open doors, so the efficiency of what was going on there is significantly diminished. So I know Peter's got an energy audit coming up, and I know we're going to be looking very closely now that construction's done on the next few months to see again, what should we use for a baseline for our 2020 budget.
Where does the fire, the current building reside?
We moved that into the capital budget as kind of a holding cost for that building transaction, and we did that with the board's engagement and those other activities as well for those studies and some of those legal fees. So the thought is that relates to this, at this point, holding cost for the sale of the property. So as long as that sale of property comes through,
Okay.
it'll wash, and if it's not, it's still consistent with a one-time expenditure. That's not something we're gonna be doing indefinitely. So either way, it's kind of consistent to do that. It's really not a ongoing operational expense.
Yeah. We don't close it. Okay, thanks. Anything else?
The expenditures charged to the parking utility are much lower. Did we change the staffing that
We did, and this kind of came up during our 2019 budget, is that in the staff transitions at the police department, officers are no longer enforcing lot compliance as far as writing citations.
Not
It's really
structured
just
either,
the non-sworn staff,
we?
so that was the adjustment to that.
Okay, I had questions on capital and the bond stuff, but I don't know if anybody else has other questions on operating things.
Landscaping contracts for turf,
What page is that?
page 3. And then street maintenance was 50% under budget? How is that possible? The last two.
Right, well, I mean, as the narrative says for street maintenance, it's just, they really couldn't schedule some of those desired activities given the scope of the other things going on in the community. The active engagement with Wilson Drive, Lake Drive, and some of the other things that we're doing. So they focused on that, and as a result, those activities were sidetracked, and we're never scheduled. Again, there's a pretty tight window for doing some of this work.
Is
And
it
it's-
striping?
Yeah.
What is street maintenance? Is it potholes? Is it?
Crack filling, large patch, pothole maintenance.
But isn't this stuff we'll have to get to, it's not, we're not.
Somebody's gone.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to fill those potholes, and those, I guess we might have money, it might be a good number now, but is it gonna be a is that gonna continue? Because it sounds like it's work that has to get done, just maybe a little bit later.
Well, I think Public Works would still like to, plan on trying to do $80,000 to $100,000 of work there. Now, street striping is a separate line item in the budget, but just from an annual maintenance perspective, and again, you know, the sense I got from Public Works is this is just a very challenging year to get all those different activities scheduled.
And then the other one was landscaping contract?
Yeah, and when we developed the 2018 budget, the thought was is that with the new RFP going out in 2018, which never happened, but that there was going to be a larger number of firms competing for the natural care landscaping services than there were with their original green team contract. So we anticipated getting some favorable competitive bids in 18 and reducing those costs. But that RFP was never issued.
I'm sorry, you can later, but.
Yeah, it was never issued, and as a result, we continue to operate under the old contract, which again is the expenditure is consistent with past history, but the budget accounted for savings based on a new RFP and more competitive bidding for the natural lawn care that the village board has engaged in.
So next year, the RFP this might be a different scenario.
No, this year the RFP went out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we did do it.
For 19,
Oh.
for 19.
Right, that was done in
And
2018.
we only got one bidder,
Right.
Okay.
and
Like it
we
was in
didn't
by the time of
actually
the
get
budget.
any significant savings out of that.
We did RFP it.
I know. I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
saying that how-
Oh, okay, I'm
I
like,
just-
okay.
if we're continually not getting some more bids, like if you find an area, then is there another list we can go to or something like that?
Mhm.
Where, it's pretty sad we only get one bid, so maybe we can adjust.
Yeah.
To make sure we get more than one bid next time.
Yeah.
Just one question about parking utility and then I'm done. The parking utility, I don't know if you guys have talked, but we're gonna need the 10,000 for the parking study. Okay. We were in the meeting, it was you and Bart, you left, yes. So we're 10,000 short.
Oh, that's right, because, yeah,
And I remember in budget hearings, I know you opposed it, but we passed taking the money out of parking utility for it.
that's right.
Just wondering.
How much is the CDA putting in?
30.
Yeah, good. Total cost about
And
90.
then we had talked about maybe going to the senior center, so leave 5 in parking utility and maybe, but there's nothing there, but I don't know what Mark's done since then.
That's a 2019 budgetary issue.
Do you have anything else, Jesse, Linda?
Yeah, towards the end, and I had asked Mark for some information organized around a particular bond issue, and where it's all there at the end, it's after
think
the
it's the
interest
second to last
rates
page.
stuff.
Which page?
61, I think, is the one you're referring to.
Yeah, page 61. So,
So this is a schedule that I normally track, and it's required as a part of our audit, it's required as a part of accounting for restricted assets. This is the source when I go from year over year and I advise the board of how many hard dollars of extra available bond funding is available. And the board had asked to see that, and I said normally that's something that we do at the end of the year. It's the end of the year, so I've as promised, included that in the fourth quarter financial report, and we'll do that on an annual basis, so the board is fully apprised of where we stand with that, as some of these projects for the coming fiscal year are going to get kicked off fairly soon.
I have a question on the ongoing service contracts. Can we add a column, so it says legal, for instance, it says current contract, and you've got the current contract, and it says contract expires, it says ongoing. What,
Do you wanna wrap up with the discussion on the page that we were talking
Yeah.
about?
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry, I'm so
I'm
sorry, I
fine,
didn't realize it.
So it's the 2016 A bonds, you note them on here. So is this like the last bits of the 2016 A bonds?
Those always are rolling into the next bond cycle,
And
if there,
no
if there's
prior-
any.
There's no, okay, so this, you're just showing the bond cycle rolling from one to the next.
Right, because it's, last in, first in, first out.
Mhm.
So the 2016 residuals will spend off first, and we're used to help calculate what we anticipated needing for the 2018 bonds. But that's how we maintain compliance with our 3-year spend-off periods on bonds, is we just roll those reserve bond proceeds into our next bonding cycle as revenue credits, and then and we'll do the same thing in 2020 if any of these funds remain available after the 2019 construction cycle. Those credits will be applied towards our bonded needs for the 2020 cycle.
So the negative in the sewer, what that negative, we're over but spent on the bond on that
Well,
category?
I mean, you can't overspend bonds, but you can overspend the project, and if you've only got limited bond
Right.
proceeds, the residuals have to be absorbed. In this case, if you recall, we had that discussion
Right.
about the Wilson Drive and the stormwater components of that project going over budget. And the sewer utility will absorb those residual costs.
Okay. So you're just carrying forward the positive numbers?
That's correct.
And are those
Wait,
meant
but I
to
mean,
be
if
that
you,
way?
but if you add up all the pink highlighted numbers, you'd get remaining bond funds 2018.
Bond funds are segmented by sub-classification, they do not cross that. So you've got street improvements, 918, 127, facility, that's a negative. Park improvements, 110,000, so they don't cross that,
You can't use park bond proceeds to,
do street improvements, no.
why?
They're legally restricted for the purpose of
Okay,
the
so
time
not
of
something
bond
we
sale.
restricted, it's something that the state.
Yeah, so that's part of the bond sale.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why, I don't have a grand total at the bottom, because those are subtotals by legally restricted
Okay,
segments.
then when you have a negative, then it's not like we can offset the negative from the sewer with the water.
That's correct.
What do you
So
do?
it's just, off of, fund balance in the sewer fund?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this is another one, okay, this is interesting. I guess I think what might help us is, if we had actual project budgets and we could look at, revenue sources, because I'm also saying, okay, we put 550,000 in general capital in levy last year, correct? I think so.
I can look it up, yeah.
So, I mean, because we have different funding, we have bond funding, we have we have grants, and we have, levy cash,
Like
so.
Wilson Drive, use bonds, use sewer, use.
Yeah.
And that it would be easier for us to understand this by project. I totally agree.
Yeah, so.
Well, I guess I'm not really following you, because this is segmented by project.
Well,
Yes,
we
but-
could talk about it in more detail in finance committee, but I mean, I think I guess what I'm trying to get to is something that, like, for us as lay people, to be able to have an understanding of what revenue sources are and compared to project costs and where we are in the projects, and then ultimately, when we put this much cash in, which projects was that cash spent on? How are the bond proceeds used? And, what's left in each of those pots at the end of the year. And I also wanted to mention the truck 54. At one point, I saw it in here at 160, and another place it was at 150. So, because it was in two different places with the assigned fund balance and anyway, so just check that.
Well, the total project is 160. 10,000 of that comes from the sale of the old truck. 150,000 comes from property tax support.
Okay. maybe
So that's
that's-
kind of where, Because I mean, you're right, that will seem
Yeah. I thought
seems
it-
somewhat
I thought
disconnected
it
if
was
you,
wrong.
if you look at the property tax amount only, so.
Anyway, well,
All
I
right.
mean, I have certain things that this gets a certain way there, but I still have,
Well, I mean,
it's
staff
still
is.
confused, a little confusing.
I mean, staff's put an enormous amount of time into developing project-based fiscal notes, which it sounds like what we're all just kind of referring to. I mean, this is a bond residual schedule, so we'll continue to work on those fiscal
No,
notes.
and I love the fiscal notes, thank you. I think what we're saying is that you'd have to go through every single packet and collect all your fiscal notes in order to get an understanding of the projects we're doing and where the revenue expenditures. Milwaukee County had all of them in one spot,
Okay,
so that's the only difference,
okay.
other than we don't even have a search key on our fiscal
Yeah.
notes. But they're getting much
I see
better,
what
I
you're saying.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Are you done with your budget?
Yeah.
Okay, so, on to just ongoing contracts, can we add a column that says next date or year of next RFP? So,
Doesn't it
for-
say when it does- yeah,
no,
it says
okay, so for
when it
instance, for Cravella, we signed it in 18, right? When does it go back out for RFP?
We're doing it in, towards the end of second quarter this year.
Yes, that's what I thought, but on here, I wouldn't be able to tell that. And so it's just wrapping up your professionals, it's giving the board a little more information of when we should expect to see staff coming forward. And if not, then we could always check back and say, you know, this was supposed to go. Because I had a question about legal and IT,
Mhm.
and it looks like the IT expires in 19, so I'm assuming we're gonna RFP it in 19, at the end of 19?
Yeah, I think that's the general gist. I mean, there's those 3 services that we're wrapping up currently, trying to get the RFP out, so then we have a contract that'll expire, and I think the next RFP will probably go out
Every 5 year, I mean, there's
4
a,
to 6 months before the expiring contract.
right, and so for insurances, like Horton Group, ongoing, I'm just saying, if you added when the next RFP would be, because there is a guide in the purchasing policy that says no longer than every 5 years. I think
Yeah,
for 3 years, and
It's pending. It's
We're-
all, this is
yeah,
all coming
we're
up. This is
actually-
part of that
we're gonna follow-
implementation
it's in-
plan we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's in the work plans for this year.
great, so if we can add that column, we know that.
You know, I'll second that, because some of these contracts, looks like are evergreen forever, and it'd just be nice to have kind of a, know what
So
the
you want me to
number
put
is.
a column in that backdates expiration date by 90 days? for
No.
when the
I want a column in that tells me when Cravella's contract will be RFP, what year.
Well, it sounds like what you're asking is in the column of contract expires, if it says ongoing, you want a date.
Or that, but it doesn't really expire. I'm
It will,
guessing
though.
that,
I mean, this is
I
all
guess so,
happening,
okay.
but all these are, ones that you mentioned, these are all coming up in the next 90 days,
Right.
right? Is that my,
Don't ask to speak.
Go ahead.
Rebecca.
Well, I think it may, like, just from a useful standpoint, if something is coming up in the next, in that, like, this current, like, the forecasted year, we could slot that in so that it could correlate with the work plan. I think that's easy enough to do. If not, I mean, I'm not gonna slot anything in for when we're gonna do something in 2021, but, you know, having, I think, like, a pulse on what that next year is.
It doesn't even have to be what part of the year. So what we did for committees, when appointments are ending or expiring, you'll see a big bright, 2019, and you'll see it highlighted of these are the ones that are expiring and that we need to, the terms are expiring. So just make it basic of, if something's come up in 19, we would know if it's 19 or 20. What year is it supposed to be RFP?
Not to beat a dead horse, but yeah, it looks like from this, it looks like Ravello Carlson, we're just contracted to them, just
Right.
picking on them like forever, so.
Yeah.
That was sort of that was one.
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, thanks.
So it just sounds like there should be the request is all dates in that column instead of, there are only a few that don't have dates.
And some don't have dates because they didn't have expiration dates.
Correct, so you wouldn't want to put a date, that's what I'm saying, but I guess with the purchasing policy, they will expire, because it says every 3 years with an extension or 2. So,
Nope, I see what you're getting at here, now that you've explained a little bit more, I'm on board.
thank you.
And I think I understand as a As a board member, that's what we're asking
Positive? I got one understanding.
Good feedback.
Great. Okay, does anyone else have any questions about the finance report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is standing committee. I was not here for the prior one, so Rebecca, do you wanna, is there, I don't know where you left off, because I just wasn't at that committee. And maybe, whoever ran it.
I know we still have things we haven't gotten.
Yeah, I don't wanna leave it.
We did not finish conclusion on review of the policy. And on policy, I'm just pulling it up. We left off at sorry, scrolling down.
Okay, while she's doing that, there are two topics that Rebecca, during agenda meeting, that came up that I want to discuss with the board, and they have to do with standards. One is, videotaping and transparency, and then the other is, which was kind of overlooked in our conversation going back to committees, and then our other is, I've never had to set an agenda and move things around, and in practice, we found that sometimes things that are in the column of Rebecca's chart saying it goes to a standing committee, this time we had to put it at full board, because it made more sense to put committee of the whole, so I was struggling, and I wanted to just run it by everyone, because once we adopt the policy, if it's set like this, so Rebecca's very by the book, and she'll be like, but it says it goes here, but we needed the time for committee of the whole, so we had to put it on full board, and I just don't want, I want to be careful, because I don't want the board to have some expectation and then be like, why'd that go just to board? So what I'm finding is that the flexibility is needed, and I know that Rebecca contacted all the chairs when something was changed, which I thought was really great, but I just wanted to share that and see if maybe we add some language, but like the bond issuance, did it go to the committee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we were trying to, what got taken off our I don't know. Anyways, we ended up, she had on full board this conversation, because there was no room in committees based on the time breakout.
What conversation is that full board?
This one, standing committee,
Standing
because
committee.
we ran out of time in
You mean on
committees.
Cal, you're saying?
No, oh, sorry.
It's at Cal, what were you
It
talking?
was, so Rebecca had it when I sat down on Tuesday, going to full board, because she ran out of committee space time slots.
Mhm.
And so I said, can we switch something?
Mhm.
Because we've always been in the cow doing this conversation, it kind of feels awkward, and it should be a committee of the whole, so not straight board.
Mhm.
So we switched it, but again, that's a judgment call, and
I think flexibility is really important, and if we're becoming an organization where we can't trust people's judgment, to do what makes sense for the organization and to get the work done, then I think we have a much bigger problem than what the policy is. So I think flexibility is really important. I appreciate that we're looking at policy and alignment, and I think it's a great conversation to have, but when it gets to that point that it just takes the people out of it, then I think we've lost something.
thank you. And then the other question was, videotaping, so we have lost,
But we can hear from other people, I just wanted to.
oh, sure. Does anybody else have anything on that? Okay, all right. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was videotaping. We used to tape committee of the whole between 6 and 7:30 without having to buy any more cameras or having to do any changes, since our policies are on hold at the moment in regards to standing committees. I would like to propose that whoever's meeting in this room between 6 and 7:30, we continue taping. It's always been a sticky point of, we didn't have two cameras, but just the basic of, we lost it, so we'll just turn that on when it's committee of the whole. But I don't wanna go backwards in transparency, because committee of the whole was so great, and I heard from a lot of residents that said they really liked the committee of the whole because it was videotaped. So-
Why can't we videotape in both rooms? That's what I don't understand why we can't just videotape committees.
I'm assuming we can't move the camera.
Well,
Is it more like
the
we'll
cameras
just-
are
Can't we
like
mount it?
$200. I mean, they're
Can't we
ridiculous,
just mount a
but
camera?
But it's the
in
How much
labor
staff time
and
is
staff time
all
that's associated with.
So, yes, and I don't remember where we left off, but, storage I did not believe was a problem. We found that you could download onto a hard drive. I thought that was our last conversation.
Yeah, when we budgeted well, we have a separate server that we're putting all the video meetings on, and frankly, when we budgeted the space, we were budgeting for 2.5 hour meetings, which we're surpassing a little bit. And then on top of that, we were only allocating for, at the time, I don't even think we were videotaping standing or committee of the holes at the time, so.
You mean CDA, Planning Commission?
No, CDA Plan Commission we did, I'm talking about this period of time, 6 to 7:30.
No, back when we did it.
Yeah, so originally when we budgeted the space needed for that server, that wasn't factored in. So the point I'm trying to make is, just know that if you as a board move that direction, that's gonna be an added expense. Now, the thing is, the cost for the server isn't extraordinarily amount. I mean, it was a 3-digit number, if I remember right. I could go back and check,
It was
but,
between 100 and 300.
but we would for surely need to add another server to accommodate for that space. But like I said, it's a 3-digit number, so.
When we discussed it before, the concern wasn't necessarily the hard drive, but it was the time that it takes to actually go through the upload of videos and how we're spending our time. And I don't know, Sarah, if you
It's like
could.
4 to 5 hours on
Yes,
my
but-
Tuesday.
But wait, it's,
4 to 5
please,
hours?
hold on.
But I
4
would
to
also
5
ask,
hours. No, because I
before
want
you
to
challenge that, I would just like to hear
You
the
know,
whole, and maybe they're done, but it didn't sound like
Yep.
it.
It's, so I use my laptop for this camera and I'll put the other and it's, by the time you put all the different pieces in, and then I can't really use my internet at that time because it's sucking up all of my internet space. It's 4 to 5 hours, and the more I do on my computer, the slower I'm making it. So that's the only thing.
But that's 4 to 5, and the reason I interrupt is because when Tyler talked about it, it's 4 to 5 hours once you push the button. You don't have to do anything in those 4 to 5 hours. I just want to make it clear that it's unfortunate for the system we have that you'd have to wait around, but you're not physically doing anything between 4 and 5 hours.
Yeah, like, Sarah, I mean, she could go, like, if
She
she's
has a
working on a
different-
memo,
yeah.
let's say, she could still do
Yep.
that. But there is, I think what Sarah's referring to is, yeah, if she has to do something on the internet's gonna run slower because, I mean, you got,
But it's not that
You're
she's, it's
downloading
not that
videos.
she's
Right.
sitting
Yeah.
there working on
Right, it
this
sounds
for 4 to 5 hours.
Right, I got that.
How
loud and
much,
clear.
how much time does it actually take? I understand that it may slow the internet, but actual work time involved in downloading, uploading, whatever.
it depends on the meeting. I think when I was doing it, it was roughly an hour or
I was
so.
gonna say about an hour,
Why? Why does it take that long?
because you have to rename everything, and then you have to, like, so the cameras are set up in 15-minute increments.
I thought we were changing that. It's a setting that we need to fix. 3
And
years ago.
so,
I talked with Arthur, he volunteered to look at the camera.
Okay, we've been trying to fix that for about 2 years.
Arthur's gonna look at the camera.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and then, so you load each segment up, and then if there's any, say you start the camera early and you have to edit,
right.
conversation in the beginning or things like that. It's just putsy work. It's not hard work, it's just putsy. But by the time you do all that and then you transfer it to the save file, to the server, that's about 30 minutes that it takes to transfer over. So it's just putsy work. It's not,
So when we left off, just because I remember this vividly, we were gonna, hopefully Arthur will find the button that we push. Without having to upload them in 15-minute increments, it's much, much smoother and faster, correct, Tyler? If we had that fixed.
I think it would be, yeah.
And then the other option is to upgrade our, we spent how much total? 500?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, we
under
had 5,000
1,000.
budgeted and it was like 500.
Because I think the next step, when I initially got the cost estimates, if you wanna go the next step up where it would download on its own, it was well over the 5,000 that was in the budget.
Well, maybe we just
So-
need to, I mean, to me, it's important to, we talked about this a little bit in finance. I mean, we had a really, I thought, useful meeting and 2 members weren't here. And we have no memorialization either through minutes or notes or video or audio of that meeting. So it's kind of like I mean, to me, it was a real shame because I thought it was a really productive and valuable meeting, and now we have no takeaways from it. So, you know, I look at the videos a lot. If there's something I don't remember from the meeting, I go back and I refer to it. I don't think a lot of the member of the public do, but some people do, so.
How many hits do we get on, I mean, how many people are actually
Staff.
watching?
Well, I'm
these
thinking like
things?
if the board wants to pursue, and this is important to the board, you should pursue an initiative so we get the equipment that we need in order to do this
And then-
more efficiently.
And
I mean,
then-
because that's what I'm hearing tonight. You know, I'm hearing that there's a level of investment that the board wants to make, so let's go find
So
out
for-
what.
Okay, but then for
hold
an
on.
entire year, we're not gonna
No.
have videotapes of.
Well,
meetings.
no, I'm suggesting moving forward. Let's get to a better place with a solution that doesn't solve the interim.
If we can
And
just
what
fix the
agreement you come
15-minute increments, I think we're gonna be better, in a better spot. But in the meantime, the minimum that I would suggest, the minimum, is just keep the camera on when, between 6 and 7:30 here, at least.
I'd agree with that.
I mean, it's just, we've taped that much before, you don't need to turn it on and turn it off, just keep it rolling. This is the same amount of time that we used to spend uploading, because it's an hour and a half. It's just it's in a different committee.
That's true.
Not sure.
And Trustee McKay.
It's interesting watching these meetings.
I have a couple, in terms of the takeaways from the meeting, in our packet today, we had minutes from our last strategic initiatives committee meeting that Tyler compiled, and I found that to be really helpful, so
Did you look at the ones from 225? Is there, did you say, oh, the trustees discussed stuff?
that's what I was talking about.
Oh,
Are you talking about the budget one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the budget. She was
Oh,
talking
I
about the
didn't
strategic
know.
initiative.
Oh,
Okay, so, that's not a solution, I'm just saying, I guess, I think we have different expectations around it.
well, I mean, if, I don't wanna, let me just say, because if I would not have asked everyone to look at that stuff, I would not have spent time organizing that meeting. If I had known that there was not gonna be any memorials, you know, it's like, why do it? Because a year from now, I'll say, but we talked about that at 225, and this is what we decided, and Wes will think something different, and Rebecca will think something different, and it
And I
won't
won't
matter. It won't matter. So I don't wanna spend time,
Right, mhm.
you know.
Trustee
I,
Kennedy.
Oh, she was,
oh,
I'm sorry.
and
interrupted
I'm
her.
sorry,
No,
I
no, go ahead.
actually I didn't realize that was the meeting you were talking about, so I apologize for that. So, yeah, take my comment. I think if the, taping, I'm gonna say I am concerned about investing more money on equipment and more staff time, and I heard you challenge the staff statements. There may be a way to minimize that, but I'm not going to say that I agree 100% with your version of
And you
what
always
it
do this
takes.
to me, and the only reason I'm challenging is because we've had these conversations before, so I know
I
you never
understand.
believe what I say.
No, that's
but-
not the case. President Rozak, it's really important for me that you hear this right now. That is not why I'm saying that. I'm saying because you need to hear from the whole board, and that's what I'm doing. I'm saying I heard everything that was said tonight, and given all of that, I'm not comfortable with investing in more equipment. If we can find a way to tape in this room 6 to 7:30, and it doesn't negatively impact productivity
Got it.
during the
I heard
day,
that. Sure.
even on an interim, we
Great.
may find a solution down the road, but we
Anything
don't
else?
want to take a break, to Trustee Menta's part. We want to keep having, we want to,
So you
have
don't want
tapes.
investment, I got that, trustee Carpenter.
wait, that actually is an oversimplification. So I'm sorry if I took all that time to try to understand it, and if that's all you're hearing, but we'll have to move on, if that's the
Can you
case.
just say that you're not interested in any further investment?
An increase over the 5,000. I'm hearing that we would need to take a break and get more equipment or an initiative or something like that. That's not something that I would support at this time. I would like to continue taping at the level that we are. If taping in this room can be done and without a negative impact to productivity, then I would support that.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Carpenter.
I think looking at those 15-minute increments would be really beneficial if at all possible. Just even from a productivity of staff side, but also from a resident side to watch it in those 15-minute increments is also a little bit kind of quirky, and for transparency, it would be nice to be able to just see what happens in that, 90-minute time span. And so, I think that could be a win for everybody, but I do really feel passionate about the transparency piece and how important taping is. There are things that come up, and sick children, days off of school, whatever it may be, that some of us can't be here, and so there may not be a million hits on our site, but just because there's not a million hits doesn't mean that it's not valuable to our community. And I think I've heard that loud and clear, and I don't know about the rest of us, but I do feel that we need to continue. And if there's a way to tape for that hour and a half, that would be wonderful.
Trustee Warren and Trustee Buckers.
So,
Trustee Buckers.
Yeah.
What if we just audio record them?
No,
That's something.
better, but that's something. You mean the ones that don't have a camera?
Ones that don't have a camera, yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
something.
It's 7:33.
Trustee Warren.
So this is on a, I just wanted to support transparency, but I have something totally different that I don't want to get lost. It's kind of a small thing, but I just.
Well, I have comments
Oh,
too.
yeah,
Do you have
yeah,
comment?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to do
We're
this
just
again
gonna have
next
to defer
time.
it.
Oh.
No, unless,
Sorry,
go ahead,
sorry,
if it's real quick.
yeah, it's a quick comment. Just in terms of when we're drafting, I was reading the ordinance behind this. In terms of when we're drafting ordinances, I noticed that we use gender-specific pronouns. We refer to the clerk, we refer to her, and this just annoyed me. His or her, we refer to the president, we refer to him. And obviously, that's not the case. I would, as we draft ordinances in the future.
Language is gonna need to change.
Yeah, I think that we need to be careful about, let's use non-gender specific pronouns,
I
because
think
it's
we're
just,
all on board
it's,
with you.
yeah, something we should pay attention to. We stress diversity and inclusion,
Yeah.
so it annoyed me as I read through, so,
Thank you.
so
noted.
so sorry. I know it's
Okay, so we'll
nitpicky.
schedule this up for the next committee of the whole. Is that it? So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Some of,
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
It's so different being in Sherwood, you're not like sweating.
It's
I know.
comfortable.
Great. Yeah.